did have a real life business studio space in Dundalk, and I hated it. I hated yoga, even though I'm a yoga teacher by trade. I hated being stuck in a tiny little room, and I couldn't go out and see other people and bring this stuff out into the real world where I think it belongs more than in a studio where people pay money to show up and have privileged information. I think that this is really, really, really important, really practical stuff that we're going to talk about today. And I have 4 kids of my own. I also am a stepmom, and I have been through like I want to my oldest is 12. He's on the autism spectrum. My youngest is 3. And so we have the middle kids. We've got 12, 10, 8, and 3. So we have everybody kind of crammed in together. We literally just started homeschooling everyone last week. I've been in public school my whole life. My kids have been in public school their whole lives. I adore public school. I think you have great resources, and I'm really excited that Deep Creek has these kind of offerings because I get to meet other parents and we can keep fine tuning this material that I'm going to present to you today. So what I brought to you, and some of you have mentioned conscious parenting. There's gentle parenting that people are talking about right now. Everybody's got to have a name to their system. So we have ninja parenting. But why I have ninja parenting instead of something like mindful parenting or gentle parenting, um, like Tracy mentioned, being a parent is so incredibly difficult. Like, we are insane people for stepping into this realm of raising little tiny humans, and also we're raising ourselves at the same time. That's like what I want us to keep remembering, that like the ninja part of this is that we're in constant training. The thing that I've learned and where this material comes from, thank you, where this material comes from is from real life stuff, like real messy situations. And Tracy talked about being vulnerable, sharing feelings, being authentic. Everything I do comes from my personal practice first. I've been in mental health as a professional for over 20 years, and I've taught in after school programming and created curriculum for kids for about the same amount of time. And I also am a parent. So I started at 19 as a stepmom when I got married in my first marriage, which was a wild, kind of abusive experience for 15 years. So I learned a lot in that space about what I didn't want to repeat, who I don't want to be anymore, what my boundaries really are now. And I can also say, entering into a new marriage and having a baby in the past few years and blending a family, we've had to go through all the custody battles. There have been protective orders. We've had to deal with CPS. All of these things, when you're talking about emotional things, emotional situations with kids, we've had kids in our family that have had severe behavioral problems, like very significant, very damaging, both to themselves and to others. Um, so I've had to come up with this system to survive as a mom on top of my own mental health struggles. So I have my own personal mental health struggles. I've lived with depression and crippling anxiety for my entire life. So when you're already either living with trauma, which most of us, to all of us, are living with some form of trauma that we carry. We all have to do something to make a living, whatever, whether it's stressing about how to get that living or stressing through while we're making that living. I mean, there's just a million different things that we have to carry, and then we have to raise humans at the same time. So the discussion I'm going to start with today is really about how we start. You can see on the screen, we're going to talk about flipping switches. What is emotional self-defense, and why are we ninja parents? And so it's the constant training. Ninjas are specialists. We are specializing in raising our children. You're here today because you're obviously a parent that cares, that wants to know more, that's looking for answers. And there's so much. I had one woman at the end of the first presentation this morning just be like, I'm so interested in all these things. I know conscious parenting, I know gentle parenting, I'm reading these books, I'm watching this stuff, I'm on YouTube, but I'm overwhelmed. My toddler still flips out, and I feel like I'm failing. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm doing the breathing, I'm doing the work, and it's not working. Now what do I do? And it's like, you're doing it. That I'm here to remind you that, like, just being here, that's training. We're training. You're here. This is it. We're enough. Like, step one is just showing up. and then continuing to build these boundaries. So the flipping switches model that I'm going to introduce today, it's basically, so my job, just so you have some background about where I'm coming from. My job is I'm a mind body therapist. So you may have experienced therapy, you may be in it now, or your kids, or we all kind of have an idea about what it is, sitting talking about our feelings, stuff like that. Western trained therapists, and when I say Western, I'm trained in like yoga psychology and more of the holistic integrated version of using the mind and the body together, and the brain sort of sits in the middle of your mind and your body, in the sense that it's reading your emotions, and it's reading the stuff that's physically happening in your body, and then it's bringing it together to send out these experiences as like a reaction to a problem. So it's your body processing, it's your your mind processing, and then your brain's like, "Ooh, I'm going to yell about that. That's anger." So my model and my way of being a therapist is taking where we meet physically and mentally and putting it together and recognizing that we can talk about your feelings all day, but that's not going to solve any problems. And it can feel good, but it doesn't keep your kid from freaking out, and it doesn't keep you from being exhausted. And there's other things that we recognize in science, that movement is a huge part of mental health. However, you go to a gym to do that, and you very rarely talk about how it makes you feel afterwards or why it's working. And then breathing is the third portion that I add to this for flipping our switches. These are like the three building blocks of mental health for kids, for parents, for families together, for everything. And we're going to go in and out. I'm going to talk about being a parent. I'm going to talk about being a person. I'm going to talk about our kids and how we can model this with our kids, and then how we can integrate it as a family together to be a whole ninja family practice. But so bear with me, and if you have questions along the way, this stuff, it's nice and neat on this screen, but it's not. It's messy work. Like, it's messy work, and we have to just get into it and kind of get dirty and say, where does this all come together? But that's my job as a mind body therapist. I work with people one on one through my private practice, which you can get a hold of me privately. And I work through donation and sliding scale, because this information that I have to share should be available to everyone, regardless of how much money you're making. It has nothing to do with insurance. You're not getting a diagnosis. I don't work like that. We sit, we talk about what your needs are, what your goals are, what you already have in place, and what we can do in the future to make it more concrete and practical for you to meet your goals. And that's kind of, we're going to go through that process today as a group. But that's how I've approached this, and I study a lot about the neuroscience. So everything we're talking about here has been tested in clinical studies and research to prove in the Western world to clinicians and to doctors that these are actually techniques that rewire your brain. So as we're learning this stuff today, everybody, the yellow box, the green box, and the orange box, the awareness, movement, and breathing, each one can be individually used as a tool for stress, anxiety, hypertension, um, increasing the lifespan. It can be for muscle tension, it can be for chronic pain, migraines. There are a million different ways you can use these tools in your life outside of parenting. So please know that you can carry these with you and apply them throughout your day and your night to find overall levels of balance in being alive. It's a pretty 100% guaranteed method of improvement, but you have to do it. It's without the work, and the work is the hard part. That's also the ninja part. Ninjas do not quit. We are fearless. We go out and we fight. We advocate. We take on a mission. We don't know what we're walking into. It sounds like parenting, right? Like, you have a kid, you have no idea what you're really doing, and then life hits you, and it's crazy. So I want to start with just the first piece of this system of flipping these switches. And these switches are flipping off our stress response. Because at the end of the day, what we understand clinically right now in mindfulness science is that one of the biggest detriments to overall well-being, that is physical well-being, that decreases your risk of cancer, stroke, hypertension, heart attack, lowering your stress, Can we get rid of stress? Absolutely not. We have children, period. That they are stress. However, lowering our or increasing our stress tolerance, just like building your biceps by lifting heavier and heavier weights, it will allow you start light and you build heavy. The same thing is going to happen with these practices. We are going to talk about the bigger picture of this, and then you're going to take with you today whatever sits in your mind. So if you hear one thing and that's all that goes with you today, that's what you need to know. Just stay with that. You can do this in absolute little pieces. But the first piece here that I want to start with that flips these switches from the stress response to a more resilient or lower level of stress response is awareness. Because if you don't know that you're stressed out, or if you are living at a high level of stress and you think that that's normal and you don't know any different and you haven't stopped to be like, what's really happening? There's no way we can get into the rest of anything, because when you don't have an awareness of your emotional state, more than just like, I'm mad right now, there's something bigger than that. And you have to start uncovering that, because when you're parenting a child that has no emotional awareness, and our kids don't have emotional awareness, our job is to be the examples, the trainers, the teachers, the coaches, all the things for these kids to start to build the emotional awareness. So I can't talk about being a parent until we talk about being a person in and of ourselves. And I didn't realize that until I had my second marriage, because I was a parent in my first one to 3 kids, but it was a I had a drinking problem. I was 100 pounds heavier than I am now. I was in chronic pain. I was in an emotionally abusive relationship. So my parenting was very scared. I was scared of being me. I was scared of the world around me. My anxiety was so great. I was giving my kids that same fear. And I thought that I was protecting them. I thought that I was reminding them that the world wasn't safe and we needed to do these things and we needed to feel these ways. And I was giving them tools of anxiety, not emotional awareness. But I didn't know that until I was out of my relationship and started handling my mental health struggles. I handled my addiction issues. And I say handled, like these things are always in process, right? Like it's not that I'm not looking to get better. I'm looking to get smarter, to get more fine tuned, to get more resilient. So my first instinct is not, I got to go have a drink. My first instinct is, I need to sit down and take a breath. And now that is truly the 1 through 10 on my list of things I need to do when I'm stressed. Well below 10 is get a drink. And it used to be no, number 1 through 10. So there's like, but this has been 10 years of practice that I've been putting through. And then building a new relationship with myself, learning through a better, healthier relationship in my marriage that I have now. And now my parenting is like, wow, the things that we've survived, the things that I manage, holy moly, nobody would have ever told me I would have survived the past 5 years of my life before having these practices. It just wouldn't have happened for me. So when you look at this awareness section, and depending on how you can see your screen right now, it may be a little small to you, but this awareness section starts. We'll start it now. I'll ask you the questions that I've put here, but this is sort of my short list of questions that I have finally refined for myself that I can do very quickly. I do this in the moment when I'm mad, when I'm fighting with my husband or with my kids, or there's some sort of conflict in my life. I've finally gotten to the point where these questions can pop up right as I'm doing it. For you, if this is brand new, you want to start looking at, this might be an aftercare process for you. You might have an interaction, a conflict, a fight somewhere, and you might have to go back to these questions and be like, hold on, what really happened here? So, this is like the quick way to do it. what is my main feeling right now? So, and I asked this in the first, and I can't see everyone, so I'm gonna make some assumptions here. If you want to add, please put it in the chat or raise your hand. But we talked about one of the main issues we were dealing with as parents, other than loving our children, because that is a given. I want to make sure that that's the basis of what I know about all of us right here and right now is that we really, really love our children. So everything that we're doing to them is or with them is from love. So the other main feeling we talked about was like frustration or anger or lack of patience. Those are sort of those main things that we're trying to set goals to do better with ourselves as parents. So I'm going to start with anger when I'm looking at my kids. One of my first awareness piece is what's my main feeling? And I challenge you just for right now, just for an exercise, take yourself back to the last time you were really mad at your kid. Any of them, little, big, whatever. And just take a moment and really feel that. Put yourself in that situation, see their face, see the room you were in, know what they did, and reflect on that for a second. Take a big breath into it. And I'm going to ask you the next question. What is the opposite of that strong feeling that you were having? In my case, it was anger. And the opposite for me is I want awareness or patience. So, can you think of what the opposite feeling is for yourself in that moment? What would you have wanted as an opposite? And that can be tricky if you're not in practice with this awareness. You can be like, I have no idea. And that's a really good thing to know about yourself too. We're working on emotional vocabulary because we need that to talk to our kids about their feelings. So the opposite of that feeling. And then think about in that moment when you were angry, frustrated, irritated, full of rage, whatever you came up with, what would have made you feel better right then and there? And for me in my moment, what would make me feel better in that moment is like I don't know if maybe you have these experiences too. I'll start yelling at the kids and all I want to do is really just walk away. Patience and what did my child take away from that situation? Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so wanting your kid, I was just reading that comment, wanting your kids to also take away something from the situation. And this is where the awareness piece is happening now because we have to figure out what we take away and what we're putting out because they're only going to take away what we give them. Because even if we want to give them a consequence and they're afraid of us in that moment because we're yelling and screaming, throwing things, hitting the table, whatever it is, they're going to take away fear and they're going to remember to be afraid of us, but they're still going to forget their homework because they forgot that they forgot the consequence because they were afraid of us. And that's where things like gentle parenting and conscious discipline where they come up with those titles. I don't have gentle in anything I do because I'm not really a gentle person. I'm not a person that's like I'm gentle and I'm kind, but in parenting, gentle is a beautiful thing, but boundaries don't have to be gentle. If my kids are pushing my boundaries and I have set those boundaries, and I want, like when we're talking about kids taking away, what are they taking away? I want my kids to know that their mom had firm boundaries and that they weren't able to walk on them because then they will carry that into the next situation with someone else and they will have boundaries that they can respect. But it goes both ways too. Thank you. Yeah, we have to respect our kids' boundaries. So, for as much as we say, I'm angry right now, I need patience. What would make me feel better? Give me a moment to walk away and then I will come back. We're giving that boundary that you're not going to push me any further than I'm going to allow myself to be pushed. But then we have to give our kid that opportunity to have that same conversation with us where we can say, all right, take your time. And that is where we get into the concept of, oh man, it just fell out of my brain. Co-regulation. Co-regulation. Co-regulation is us being the example of what regulating our feelings look like, and then doing that in front of our children. Thank you. Doing that in front of our children, whether they are throwing chairs. I brought up a lot of violent stuff in the last talk, and I'm gonna just say this now. I got chair throwers at my house. I got wall punchers. I got bedroom destroyers. I've got kickers, screamers, the terrible things that fly out of their mouth. Like, I'm not saying they learn the language from me. They might, but I mean, I understand. Like, I got rageful children, and I see it. And we've worked so hard the past couple years with, and we've separated houses. They have to go back and forth. They have reasons for their rage. I had to get awareness that my anger at them being frustrated was mostly because I was tired of hearing about their dad. I was like, I divorced that dude. I don't want to hear about this. You take that somewhere else. And I realized like that's all part of their anger too. Like, awareness comes in those pieces where once we start this practice, this ninja practice of forming our own mind and thoughts around our emotions, then being able to speak clearly to our children about what we're actually experiencing in a vulnerable way. It is not a gentle practice, but it is certainly a practice that gives resilience and strength to our children a lot earlier than probably we ever had a chance to get it. We've had to be rolled by life. And our kids, maybe in this new day and age where we have this information, have an opportunity to see us grow while they're growing. And I wish that my parents had done that for me. I don't think I was ever raised by people. They loved me very much, but they never taught me these tools. And I suffered a lot because I did not know how to express myself. They didn't want, I was spoiled. I was straight up spoiled. I didn't have boundaries. There weren't rules. I had feelings. They were dismissed. They were covered up. They were, oh, well, you're just dramatic, or oh, you don't, or oh, well, it gets better. Or, oh, wait till you're an adult. That feels terrible. What if we looked at our kid and said, I'm angry right now. What I'm really feeling is hurt because I've given you these directions. I'm exhausted right now, so I'm really looking for some help. What do you need so we can get this done? And it sounds like really sweet and special, and I would love to say that happens really well at my house every time. It doesn't. I still have those conversations though, because that's the co-regulating piece. If we start screaming back, all we're doing is living on this high level. Like, it's just like revving your engine in neutral, just revving. And it's just going to burn everybody out. And if you reflect back on the times where you've had the most success with your kids, I don't think it's when you've been screaming at each other. Like, I'm never sure. I don't think that ever gets the point across. So that's the first part of this awareness, is simply being aware of what you're feeling. If it's anger, why are you angry? Can you look at, is it because your kid's scaring you? Are you noticing that their behavior is something in a pattern that's causing them trouble at school? And then you go into all that self-doubt. They're judging me. They're going to think I'm a terrible parent. This stuff isn't working. All the terrible things we say to ourselves. I know you're not talking to your kids like you're talking to yourself. So think about that. Think about what you're saying to yourself in these moments already. And then in awareness, we have, do I have 30 seconds or less? Or less. I'm not saying more than 30 seconds. I'm saying or less to take a breath before you speak or act. Can you just breathe for a second? And then when you take that breath, is it clear? Is it easy? Is it a smooth, steady breath? Because we'll get into breathing. Because hyperventilating breathing while you're screaming is not a breath of awareness. That is a stress breathing pattern. That means we don't have control. It's or that where it feels like it's all coming from right here and your shoulders are lifted and you feel like you're just in this ball. That is why we use that in awareness. That is if you don't have words to explain what you're feeling, your physical body can tell you, wait a second, this probably is not the time I should be talking. I should just take a minute. And then curiosity. I really love that one. And again, I want to preface this. This is all stuff that comes with practice. So if you're thinking there's no way I can do this while my toddlers or my kid or my adult child is having a tantrum in one way, shape, or form. You can, you can, and you may get one piece of it and the rest falls apart. That's fine too. I very rarely get all of this in one conversation or one experience. And a lot of times I got to go back, look at this and go, "Oh, that's what I meant to do next time." So it's not a perfect process. It's very overwhelming if you think of that you got to do it all at the same time. You don't have to be overwhelmed by this. And like the last two pieces of this, what are other feelings happening at the same time? So if I'm angry at my kid and I'm frustrated with them, there's probably other feelings. If you had a hard day, if work was a bummer, if you got in a fight with somebody, if you're stressed about something else, other feelings are happening that are highlighting and amplifying what you're already experiencing. So it's going to make whatever you're feeling towards that person in front of you seem so much more intense if you can't figure out there's other parts to it. And then can you speak clearly about your feelings right now? So in that moment, if you can speak clearly and you feel you have that clean breath, that you can drop your shoulders, you can take a big breath. You don't have to get rid of the feelings, but can you speak clearly in that moment? And that is step one that has to start with you. But I have introduced it as an entire way of having conversations during conflict in our house. And then I've translated it as a teacher because I teach after school programming and I train early childhood educators and other professionals in these techniques in different forms. And one of my favorite ways to use awareness with kids as a co-regulation tactic when I'm just done with them and I have nothing left to say and they are melting down. One of my favorite examples is I was playing with this summer and I had a kid in summer camp. I didn't know him. He was kindergartner, first grade, and he cried over everything. Like, I mean, just everything. And he would just lose his mind. It wasn't just little tears, it was huge reactions. And my first experience with him was we were reading off the name list, the very first like 5 minutes of camp. And his name started with a Z. It was at the bottom of the list. So he was last on the list to be called. By the time we got to him, he's sobbing. And I'm like, what's wrong, bud? He's like, my name, it was last. I didn't want to be last. And and the whole class is looking at him like, I don't know what to do. And I just looked at him. I was like, man, you are doing a great job showing how upset you are right now. Like your whole body looks really upset. And that feeling it's a big one. And you're doing a great job sharing it with everybody. And that alone, just pointing out, rather than being like, "What's your problem?" or like, "You're okay. It's okay." It wasn't okay to him. Saying okay didn't mean anything. When you're mad and somebody tells you to calm down, I would say most of the time that makes you worse. I hate when my husband tells me to calm down when I just need to be mad, like, get out of my face. And so kids are going to have that same much more natural reaction because they're not conditioned after, in their adult years yet. So hide that stuff. So over the week, this child had like a bazillion more meltdowns. And I played with this technique a lot with him and some of the other kids. And it was almost like magic. When you bring awareness and curiosity to the big experience, it derails you from holding on to their anger or your own because you're asking a question all of a sudden. You're making it bigger by like looking at them. Wow, you are doing a great job being mad at me right now. You are awesome at being mad. And like you can't say that with a straight face, even if you're mad. If you're looking at this kid and you really recognize they're just like a little dude. And yeah, this is what they got. It I would say about 80% of the time it works pretty well because it derails all that response. They're so used to getting yelled at to hear that they're good at being mad. It's just it's weird. So I really have a lot of faith in this awareness piece as an individual thing. And you can do the same thing for yourself. Practice it internally. if you can catch yourself in the middle of a reaction, even like, I don't know, you're spiraling out. I do a lot of stuff. The shower is a great like therapy tool, standing in the shower, having conversations with yourself. Or when you're driving, if you're going through all the spirals of having conversations with yourself, asking yourself, wow, I'm being really good at being anxious right now. Like I'm a pro at anxiety. Um, it can just switch the perspective enough that you can smile and go, yeah, that seems to be my style, but I don't know, none of that stuff has come true yet. So maybe I got to switch it up. And that's where we bring in the other pieces. So movement and breathing happen, they help to bring awareness to awareness, but then they also help to move when you start to become aware of the big stuff, whether, excuse me, it's anger, frustration, fear, anxiety. The movement piece is the other piece that, like, I can get into the nerdy details. When you start movement, you start to create new neural pathways, new parts of your brain start to fire, and they start to release the chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, and they're the same things when you're taking Zoloft or oh man, Paxil or Cymbalta or any of those, the SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They are helping to regulate that serotonin in your brain that is naturally created and to help boost it. But movement, what we understand now, thank goodness science has caught up with this ancient mind body psychology system, is we're making those same chemicals in our brain naturally when we're moving with intention. And what does intention mean? It means you're thinking about what you're doing while you're doing it. So whether it's I teach yoga as a practice, but I'm also a personal trainer and I'm a Brazilian jiu-jitsu coach. And so combat, violence, aggression, they are all part of my movement practice. And I encourage that. If you are a person that you're like, I can't sit still in yoga, and the gym's boring to you, find anything that works. It does not have to be some peaceful movement that you're doing. If you're not feeling peaceful, that's what we have in here. Underneath movement on this sheet, we have intense movement may be good if you answer yes here to these questions. Do I feel restless or anxious? Do I feel aggressive or violent? Is my body tense? Sometimes trying to relax when your body is tense makes it more tense. So if you physically exhaust your body with movement, that tension dissolves because the chemicals in your brain start to switch naturally with the movement. Do I feel twitchy or fidgety? You know, you can get angry or nervous and you just need to move. And number one is, am I in control of my body? So if we're going to use intense movement as a movement practice when we're angry or trying to work through frustration, you need to make sure you're in control of your body. You're not going to hit somebody else. You're not going to hurt yourself. It's not about punching a hole in the wall to get rid of your frustration. That is not like being in control at all. That's losing control and like breaking your hand. And that's, if it happens, it happens. And then you go back to this and say, how do I do it better next time? You know, but being in control is first and foremost. I'm a big fan of intense movements for I process a lot of my stuff through doing planks. I know that's not everybody's favorite thing, but there's something about like you can plank against a wall, you can plank on the floor, you can plank with your knees down. You can be very supported, but what that does is it helps regulate your whole system because you're pulling everything in towards the midline of the body. You're centering yourself. We use it for kids all the time. Planking is the thing we do regularly. In between lessons at home, we'll do 30-second planks and it gets your entire body lit up, tense, and then exhausts some of that energy. It forces you to focus. There's nothing else you can think about when you're planking other than planking. Um, and then it's over with. And your body gets that rush of endorphins, that the good chemicals, and it gets that feeling of release from some of the tension that you're holding from your anger. Tensing and releasing in your body is another good intense movement without having to do any exercise. It's balling up your fists. We do that naturally. If you're angry, think about where's your tension going? A lot of times it's here. You're balling up your fists. You might not know it, but some people grip with their feet. You'll notice if you're angry, you're like gripping into the floor. Your jaw gets tense. A lot of people tense their jaw. Because where can you hide it that you think nobody can see you be mad, right? And it's like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. But you can use that tension to your advantage in anger. It's just about the mindfulness. So bringing awareness, okay, I'm mad. My awareness is that I'm mad. My awareness is also that I am tensing everywhere and I don't want to let go yet. So tense harder. Make that movement really intense. Like ball those fists up and intentionally squeeze them. Make it a point. I am squeezing my fists. I'm putting my anger into my hands and I am squeezing. I am lifting my shoulders into my ears and I am squeezing. I am clenching my jaw and I am squeezing. And then it's breathing it out and letting it go, relaxing the shoulders, relaxing your hands. Taking a breath in, taking a breath out. And you've moved out some of that aggression. And it works similarly. You can think through it like a dog will growl, a rabbit, when it's scared, even a rabbit, a prey animal, when it's hunched up waiting to not be eaten. Yes, exactly. You found your feet. Exactly. I do that too. My toes clamp. Um, so yeah, like start to notice now your patterns of tension while I'm talking. Go through your body, feel your feet on the ground, wiggle your toes. But yeah, like so even if you think stillness, if you're watching like a rabbit or a rat and they're scared, or you have a hamster at home, they ball up, but they're vibrating. They're never in stillness. There's a vibrational aspect. They're quivering. And even in excitement, you'll see like rabbits pop. They'll hop or they'll thump their legs in danger. It's a communication tool, but it's also a way to get out some of that energy so they can go. They're clearing that body so they can run. So when you think about that tension in your body gets trapped, and by the end of the day, that's exhaustion. Having your body tense. When you have a desk job, I work with people a lot one on one, and they're like, but I don't do anything all day. I sit at a desk. Yeah, you do. And then you sit at a desk and you stress out. You squeeze it all in. You get paranoid because, like, oh no, now I got to go home and now I got to deal with after school and I got to deal with homework and I got to deal with dinner and I got to deal with getting kids to sports and whatever it is. So it just keeps creeping and your body has no rest. Like, letting that go frees up so much more energy. So adding movement is so important to anything that we're doing. And then we get back into co-regulating, right? How do you do this in a moment with a child? Because a child uses movement really well when they're mad. They're throwing things, they're hitting, they're kicking, they're throwing their body on the ground. And then you notice as they get older, it gets more sneaky. Then it's verbal, and then they're yelling at you and they're saying terrible things. But then there's slamming doors. There's, you know, walking out. Fine, I'm leaving. That's a movement. That's moving through the situation because you don't have the words. The kids don't have the words to say it. And as adults, most of the time, we don't either. Which goes back to that's why I said this is a messy process. We have to keep diving in. We go back to awareness. Oh, I don't have the words for this. Oh, maybe I have a movement. And that movement is I'm just going to clench my fist till I figure out what's wrong. Okay, that's a movement that can work. How do we do that with our children then? In that moment where they're freaking out? Do we have that conversation with them? What if we plank right now? Could you do some push-ups with me? How about we stop? Let's just do a push-up with me. And if you feel really uncomfortable with your push-ups, you can't do a push-up, even better. Show your kid you're vulnerable. Show your kid that you too have things that you are working on. Bring awareness back into it, and here we go with awareness again. But one of the other really powerful things that has worked, we had a father in the last group mention, wow, we should have some kids in this group so they can hear what we go through as parents. And it would be so cool if our kids recognize this. But I will tell, I'll tell you what I told him. This process, if you utilize these three techniques, the building blocks of mental health, these are the three building blocks. You utilize them with vulnerability. You're willing to be messy and uncomfortable and, feel like have these moments in front of your children. They start to see that we're growing with them. And that's something nobody, like my parents never said, "Hey, we've never done this before." They never told me, like, "I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying something right now. Help me out." Had they said that to me, I think I know I would have, at least as a teenager, had a little bit more understanding. Because I'm certainly making it up as I go. Like we're going off of some experience. We're reading stuff, we're watching stuff, we're talking to our friends. But at the end of the day, nobody has ever raised our kids before. Like these kids have never been raised by anybody. We've never, like, this is brand new to everybody. And so we have to have those moments, especially of awareness, to share with our kids. You're mad right now and I don't know how to deal with it. I what do you need from me? Because I've offered you my love, I've given you consequences, I've told you what we need to do. What do you need? And they might not have an answer, but that sets it up for you to be able to say, "Well, let me tell you what I need. Right now what I need is a break." So, in my house, my husband is very supportive in being able to step in and I can walk out. And I didn't I mean, I've had times where I didn't have anybody and I was a single mom and I didn't have that. And my kids were a lot smaller and I couldn't walk away. Um so I recognize that too. And there's times when the kids are throwing things or they're destroying their room and you can't walk out. So I have there's going to be exceptions to these. But first, if there is a way for you to make space and to show your child, "Hey, you don't hold me emotionally hostage. You can have your temper tantrum, but I'm going to continue cooking dinner. Everybody in this house needs to eat. So you can have this whole room to yourself. You go do your thing. My bubble is here, and you're not going to push back into that. So my joy, you can't have that." Setting those emotional boundaries so our kids know that they can have feelings, but they do not have to belong or be part of anyone else. That really has helped my kids understand that I it's a different level of intolerance in some ways that I have, in a good way, where they're like, "Oh, mom doesn't play like that." Like she will walk away and she will leave me freaking out. And I will. I do regularly. I'm like, "I'm not your hostage. I'm sorry you're feeling this way. You have tools. Use your tools. I love you. And when you're ready, let's talk about it." And I'm out. And it's hard. Your kid is sad. They're upset. They're angry. So are you. I mean, I do this and I'm mad when I do it. I'm like, "I am mad right now, but you're not putting more mad on me. I'm out." And it's not an abandonment. They're not alone. It's recognizing they need the space and they can't ask for it. So being able to set that tone is really important. When you're finding your awareness, you are helping your kids build theirs. And then together you have this practice that will continue to work for you. And that's where we get into the breathing section. Tracy, can you go back? You switch screens. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm like taking notes while you're talking and I'm not even looking at the screen.
You're all good. I want to add one more piece to the movement though, while I'm looking at it now. We did talk about intense movements. One thing we talked about in the last group that I thought was helpful, and Tracy had good feedback on it as well, because it seems to have worked with her child and her family. And it's an example of co-regulation. If you can share the tapping thing, I'm going to talk about it, but can you share that after that? Two techniques you can do right here and right now, if you're sitting, standing, whatever. Two techniques for movement that you could do as a family. They're really cool, and they look silly, but it feels cool. It's called tapping. And you take one or two fingers and you're literally just tapping around your face. I like you're really sensitive through your forehead. There's a lot of nerves here and through your temple, your jaw, places of tension. And it's a gentle tapping. You can do it like I like along my jawline, upper lip, lower lip, through your eyes. And it's just gentle. You can get the back of your neck. I like through my collarbone. There's a lot of tension there. And if that's too gentle, so take well, I won't add. Just try that and see what happens once the tapping is finished, even after a few taps. This is where movement and awareness come together. This is how we find both of these things. So where you've tapped, you now have awareness. So that tight jaw, you take it off. Now I'm aware that it was tight and I have an option to release it. It's giving yourself options. We have all the power we need to take care of ourselves, but it's reminding us how to get there. So that's an option. Another good one is it's called, I learned this in grad school. They called it doing, but it's, you're, you're literally like punching yourself. And it's at varied levels. If you have a friend or a partner at home, it's really nice to have somebody do it to you. And they just like they're kneading or punching down some dough all over. And they can get your head, your neck, your back, your legs, everywhere. And you can do it to yourself. I do this a lot. Like if you're feeling really anxious and you get that feeling where you're out of your body, or you feel like you're kind of watching yourself have a reaction, that can feel super scary. And I hate that feeling. But being able to sort of make some contact with yourself, bring some blood flow and sensation back to the area, then you wipe it off like dirt on your shirt or flour on your pants. You're just brushing from top to bottom, or like you walk through a spider web and you're brushing all the way down to your feet and you brush it off. So I am angry. I am angry. I am angry. I'm in control of my body because I'm not punching myself hard. I'm angry. I'm angry and I'm brushing it off. I'm brushing it off. I'm brushing it off. I'm taking a breath and I'm going to take another moment of awareness. What happened? But that kind of stops the process. And it's really fun because kids are definitely going to get down with that. And if that's something that you're practicing in front of them or with them before there's a moment of crisis, in that moment of crisis, you will eventually, I say eventually, this is a process that takes a while, but you will eventually be able to stop in the crisis or notice it when it's amping up to say, hold on, let's do this. Just find some tapping. Or maybe you guys have a practice where you can do that, the doing to each other, wipe it off, wipe it off, wipe it off. And then maybe you still have to be mad, but that's a reset. Tracy, can you share how that works for you and your family?
Sure. So I shared in our morning session. So my husband is a therapist, and he had probably 5 years ago. Our daughter was one, and we were back in those toddler years of like, oh my goodness, how am I going to make it through to bedtime? And I was really stressing out. And he's like, stop, you need tap therapy. And he walked over to me and he started tapping my forehead. And I was like, you need to get away from me. But after I was calm, and he said, no, I really want you to see this. I saw it at a training, and he was telling, you tap across, you tap down. And he's like, and you focus on the tapping. He said it really brings you back into your body and helps you calm down. So when I wasn't so angry at him for touching me when I was already mad, I really started to like think through it and try it. And I've been cognizant of the fact that I have now like internalized that as one of my strategies. And sometimes it's not my face, right? Like sometimes I'm sitting in a meeting with somebody and they're saying something that I'm getting angry about, but I'm still trying to be professional. And I tap my hands under the tables. There's also lots of nerves in your hands. So I tap my hands. But anyway, now my 6-year-old has watched me do this at times. So now she says, and we'll say to her when she gets angry, I'm going to do tap therapy. And, so now the other day, for the first time now, it's taken years. The other day, she was mad at her brother because she asked for a second ice cream cone and he said no. And typically she would scream and yell and carry on and then go ask the other brother. But this time she said, Benjamin, I need you to walk away and I'm going to do tap therapy. And I was like, 5 years later, it clicked, but she used it in a moment of upset. She'll use it like when she's just sitting there, but it finally transferred and it takes a long time. But it was that moment of like, oh, she has seen me do this. She has seen me say to her to do it when she's calm. And now she's actually starting to use it. So it really does. It takes practice, it takes time, but it works.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Tracy, and thanks for sharing that in the last one too, because that's exactly how co-regulation works. Where Tracy's doing that against, not against her will in the beginning, but her husband's showing her he was co-regulating in that moment. He was recognizing what was going on before she had the awareness of, like, she knew she was having a feeling, but he's like, "Oh wait, there's options for this. You don't just have to be mad. You don't just have to be overwhelmed." And then Olivia picks up on that over time, and then it becomes her own strategy. And that that is so that leads into this great question, Miss Price, right? Is this so overwhelmed and exhausted, like the parenting mantra? I am overwhelmed and I am exhausted. It's like the parenting 101. And I feel you, because we talked about this too. There's two, I think, from my understanding of exhaustion as a parent, there's like two types. There's physical exhaustion, like after you've done a workout and everything is, your body's physically tired. I don't think we get there very often here in America in our average day, unless we're kind of like lumberjacks, or we're working on road construction, or you're in a warehouse and you're constantly walking all day. If you're sitting at a desk and by the end of the day you're exhausted, um, that type of exhaustion I chalk up to emotional body exhaustion. So you're carrying emotional weight. And when you're carrying emotional weight, you think about it, it probably adds an extra 100 or 200 pounds to what it feels like being in your body. So start to think through that exhaustion at the end of the day and think about for yourself. Are you exhausted because you moved heavy things? Or and normally how you know that is you're not sleeping well. If you're physically exhausted, you're probably going to be sleeping pretty well. If you're not physically exhausted and you are dealing with emotional exhaustion, you're struggling to sleep and you're struggling to stay awake. It's the weirdest feeling because you will pass out, but it might be for an hour or two, and then you're back up in terror. And movement for that was the question. What is movement for being extremely overwhelmed and exhausted? That is a great question, and it is exactly the right place to start with movement. There is there are tons of slow, gentle movements that you can start with. And I will tell you, you know what? We'll just go through a very brief practice right here and right now. If you're seated, come to the edge of your seat. And I hope that Tracy can email this to everybody, this sheet, because each one of these sections has a QR code. And that QR code next to movement has a 5-minute chair stretching exercise video. So if you scan that code and you go into that, it's me walking you through something similar to what you're going to do right now. But this is a practice you can do right now to bring some energy back into your body. It's going to get us into the breathing section. So I'm going to combine both. So we're going to build our breathing and our movement in together, and you're going to do this practice and feel what it actually feels like in your body right now. So get your feet on the ground, if you have your feet on the ground, if you can be comfortable like that. So you're going to press your feet into the ground, put your hands on your thighs, and just notice how you're sitting. You don't have to do anything special. You're not going to get this wrong. It's not a test. You're just bringing yourself into this seat. Start first by sliding your hands up to your rib cage. And I'm going to just bring the camera down so you can see. I'm making a clamp with my hands, and I'm bringing it around the bottom of my rib cage. And I'm adding some gentle pressure. Another thing, if you have an elastic waistband, pull it up a little bit around your belly button. And I know it might not feel comfortable. We're not thinking about body image. I want you to think about we're thinking about breathing. So love your body just the way it is. And as you inhale, You're going to breathe out into your hands and into your stomach. So if you can feel that waistband get bigger, feel it get bigger. If you can feel your rib cage expand, feel your rib cage expand through your hands. And exhale. Pull the belly button in toward your spine like you're squeezing out a tube of toothpaste to get all the air out. As you inhale again, let everything expand. Exhale. Take a few more of those breaths. And if you feel comfortable sliding your hands back to your thighs, slide them back to your thighs and have that strong, straight seat. You can listen to my voice and keep your eyes closed if that feels comfortable for you. And start to notice anything that's in your mind, like clouds in the sky. You're not able to hold those clouds. You can't change the clouds. If they're storm clouds, it's going to rain whether you like it or not. So let the thoughts come into your mind and be as they are. See if you can watch them. Is there a part of you that can watch these thoughts? Just like you would watch the clouds and look for shapes. In the next breath, breathe out anything that may be able to release from your mind right here. And invite the rest to stick around. If it's stress, if it's anxiety, if it's fidgeting, let it all stay. And squeeze your shoulders up into your ears. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Take a big breath in as you do it. Big breath in and squeeze. As you exhale, drop the shoulders. Breathe out. Bring your left ear to your left shoulder. Chin to your chest. Right ear to your right shoulder. Lean your chin up toward the ceiling. And now turn it into a full circle, nice and smooth in both directions. And then center back. Take a big breath in and a big breath out. We're going to engage the middle of your back. A lot of our exhaustion comes from our physical posture. I specialize in posture and alignment. And a lot of times, aligning your body brings a lot of energy back. So, one thing you want to do is grip your hands. You're going to have your right palm up and your left palm down. And you're going to make this little link. And you're going to hold it together. It's kind of like one of those choir boy things. So, you're going to have this grasp. Check your shoulders. Did you lift your shoulders up? That's your natural habit of being stressed. Pull the shoulders back down, but pull your hands apart. So I'm going to bring the camera back down. I'm at like my stomach height, the bottom of my rib cage. Pull your hands apart. Drop the shoulders down and away. Keep pulling. Add all the pull you can. Slide your rib cage back. Tuck your tailbone under so it feels like you're doing a sit up. Your core is engaged. The middle of your back is pulling together and you're stretching, stretching, stretching. Release your hands and bring them straight out and reach them overhead. You'll take your right hand and grab the left wrist and gently tilt yourself to the side. Tilt to the right. Press your left foot down into the floor. So push the left foot down like you're trying to stand up. Push your right hip down like you're trying to sit down. And you're gently pulling across your body. So you have some engagement. You're using muscles. Pull yourself back up. Bring your hands back down. And now you're going to switch. The left palm is up, the right hand is on top. You're linking them in the opposite direction. Unless you did it backwards, just make sure you're doing it in the opposite direction. And now pull again. Check your shoulders. Bring them away from your ears. Pull, pull, pull. Use all your muscles. Slide your rib cage back. Tuck your tailbone slightly so you imagine you're zipping up pants that are a little too tight. So all of a sudden you tuck in that tail. You pull, pull, pull. Here's your posture. This is where you want to start to think about sitting. Maybe not this intensely, but pull, pull, pull. And then release, bring your arms up overhead. Left hand grabs that right wrist, and you're going to gently pull to the left. Push your foot into the floor through the right heel. Push that left butt cheek into the seat so you're strong. Check your shoulders. Don't pull them up into your ears. Take a breath. And bring it back down. Take your hands to your knees. The next step, pull your chest forward like you have a magnet in the center of your chest and it's being drawn to the screen. Pull it forward. Pull your shoulder blades together, just like they felt when we were pulling our hands apart. Pull your shoulder blades together. Tilt your hips up toward the sky and make a big arch through the back of the body. I'm tilting my chin up toward the ceiling. And then I'm going to roll my shoulders up into my ears and then roll them down as I push back into the chair. So my hands are on my knees. I'm stretching into my back. And then you're going to rock forward, pulling the chest through, back, arching into that angry cat. Every time you move, you're going to breathe. Forward inhale. Exhale, move it back. We're going to add sound. So you're going to inhale forward. When you exhale back, ah. Inhale. Ah. All the breath. There's a reason they teach you this in childbirth, to use sound with breathing. It gets everything moving. So go back and forth. One last time, and then come back to center. See if you can find that strong, straight seat. Lift your shoulders up into your ears. Roll it down your back. Connect your hands for a moment, just like we did in that little choir boy hand thing. Pull your arms apart. Pull those hands apart. Keep that feeling in your back, but let your hands go. Bring your hands down to your thighs, but keep the back strong. Gently press your feet into the ground like you're trying to stand up, just a little bit. And you'll notice you lift out of your seat a little bit. But you have the back engaged. If you have to go back into those hands, pull them back and then drop the hands, keep the back engaged. Now your left hand comes over to the arm of the chair. It might be like this. The right hand comes back and I'm twisting. Looking over my right shoulder, taking that twist. Keep yourself twisted. Look over your left shoulder. You can look down or up. And then you'll come back to center. Sit up tall. Right hand comes to the left side. Left hand sweeps around. You can grab the back of the chair. Take your twists. Looking over that left shoulder, take a big breath here. And then when you're ready, look over the right shoulder. And really feel the front of your shoulders, your chest, this space around your armpits. That space may be really tight and you're noticing it now. That comes from poor posture, sitting at screens all day. Bring yourself back to center. And this is one way you can start to combat that. Last challenge. This one's a challenge because we've stretched a little bit. You're going to interlace your hands behind your head. You're really going to test your postural muscles now because you may notice your arms are trying to eat you. You also may notice it takes or your chest is poking out and your stomach's pressing out. Your goal is to imagine you're pushing up against a wall. So pull the rib cage back. My whole body goes from this to pull in. I'm lining my ribs up over my hips. I'm pushing my head back into my hands. I'm pulling my elbows back toward the wall behind me. Push the feet into the ground so you're sitting up really tall. You feel all your muscles. Take a big breath in. Exhale, hold it, keep working. And then drop the arms. You can drag the right arm across the body and stretch. Looking to both sides. You can drag the other side over and stretch. Looking at both sides. Drop the arms. And we're going to end this with a breath practice. Starting first, I'm going to give you 60 seconds. I'm going to talk you through inhaling for the count of 3, We're going to hold our breath at the top of that inhale for a count of 3. And then we're going to exhale for a count of 4. If it makes you nervous, anxious, uncomfortable, you breathe and count at your own pace. What we want to do is exhale longer than we inhale. That's how we flip switches to go from stress response to more of a calm. So getting ready, take a regular breath. Breathe it all out. Pull your stomach in like you're pushing everything out, and then inhale. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. And exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. And hold. 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. And hold. 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Regular breathing. Go back to ordinary, everyday breathing in your body. Notice your posture. Be aware of your shoulders. Has tension crept back into your jaw and your forehead? Are you able to soften through your toes and your fingers? And then inhale again. 1, 2, 3. And hold. 3, 2, 1. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stay in your breath. I'm going to give you a few moments to get to your own counting. 3 in, 3 hold, 4 out. Noticing your rib cage and your stomach expand. Sensing your collarbones soften, your jaw relax, forehead soften. Any thoughts that arise, let them be. They can stay. And to close out this breathing practice, we'll add sound again. Big inhale when you're ready. And hum or sigh it out. Ah. And then sit in that silence for a moment. Notice how you feel. Notice how your body feels now. Sense any heaviness in your body, any lightness in your body. Notice your mind, your level of exhaustion, both emotional and physical. And know that that practice took 3 minutes. So if you noticed any little bit of change in those 3 minutes, even if it was just curiosity, that's a start. That is step 1 in just starting to move through those feelings of exhaustion. What's actually causing them? And then in that process of getting still and quiet, you'll start to notice what your body's telling you. It's probably telling you need to get more sleep. Good. Yeah, it needs to tell you, wait, I need to do that more. Maybe I need to pay attention to how I breathe or how I stand or how I sit. So in this process of moving, breathing, and paying attention, you become your own therapist. You become your own guide. And then you have the tools to take that back. This is absolutely something to do with your kids. Bring this practice to your family, to breakfast time, to dinner time, to middle of the day time. I'm glad it felt really good. And Yeah, that's awesome. And guilt is something that's so heavy and it keeps us from doing stuff all the time. No need to feel guilty. Moving in any way, shape, or form. If you're like, well, I didn't get to walk or run today, I didn't get to the gym today, so I failed. No, you didn't. This was it. This was it. Make this what you did then. You did enough. And then tomorrow is another day, which leads me to one, I need to respect your time. And two, I want to introduce the back part of this that you'll get in your email so you can make your own plan. So we just talked about overwhelmed. We talked about exhausted. We talked about angry. We talked about anxiety. We talked about stress. This is the flipping switches. So I gave you, we went through a lot of the practices. We talked a lot about where they would come in handy, how we use them with family, self, kids. So this model on the back is how where are we actually going to practically switch off these switches. So the first, it's three boxes. Switch off. We'll say, I want to switch off feeling overwhelmed. I want to switch on. What would the opposite of that be? You go back to the awareness section, ask yourself some of those questions. What part of that overwhelmed? Like, what would the opposite? Would it be rest? Would it be ease? Would it be calm? It's something specific for you, you know? And you're going to have to take a moment. So, under the awareness section in those boxes, you're putting down, maybe you're asking the questions you need to ask yourself to turn those switches off and on. Maybe you're having a moment of curiosity. Maybe it's an observation. Oh, I feel this when that. So you're noticing that in the awareness section. In the breath section, you're playing with the breathing. Do I need to count my breath? Do I need to sit quietly and just notice my breath? Do I need to add sound to my breath? Do I need to look up more breathing techniques? Now you know a person that can help you. I got you. I just taught you the basics. This is like 101 stuff. All of this stuff, we could talk about one of these things for days at a time. So this is just the beginning. And then the movement piece. What movement helps me? Is it going on a walk? Is it doing this stretch? Is it um is movement stillness? Stillness can count as movement. Do I need to move into being still? Is that what my body's asking me to do to switch off being overwhelmed? Sometimes you have to let go. Less is so much more. Less is always, always more. So remember that when you're filling this out. You do not have to fill every space. And this is an awesome opportunity for you to sit down with your family and your kids and say, guys, what do we want to switch off as a family? What ninja training do we want to embark on today? Let's ninja train ourselves to switch off anger. That's a huge, huge task. And now you have the three fundamental tools of awareness, breath, and movement to start chipping away at it. And fail, make mistakes, be vulnerable, get messy, know that it doesn't work much of the time. And then all of a sudden, it starts to happen. It's a pretty cool process. Get yourself a community. Like having everybody here today is so exciting. Get a community, have friends to talk about this with. Have somebody that you can call that maybe is outside of the family who can talk to your kids when they're mad for you, who can give another point of view or perspective, who can check you and be like, you need to calm yourself. Go, like, step away. It wasn't that big of a deal. Take a breath and then go back and yell at your kid again later. Like have people that you can talk to. Which takes me to my final plug. We have the Mind Body Center. So I have my donation based and sliding scale one on one mental health center. We work on personal training. So we build in movement, we build in mind body training. So we do the mental health supports. We could go deeper into all of this to customize it for what you need and what your goals are. But please reach out to me if you just have questions. I'm here to guide you in finding more of these resources. I really appreciate your time today. This is a lot of material, so please don't get overwhelmed. Just start somewhere and see what happens. It's fun, I promise. And I'll send it back to Tracy if there's time for questions. I got you. I can stick around. If you got to run, please run. I'm really grateful to have you here testing this stuff out with me and helping me fine tune this material. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I told you it would be good. So, Kristy, thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording. So, if people want to share or ask questions, they can. So, give me 2 seconds to do that. I think it should just be a click.